Hi, everyone, and welcome to Ignite and Flourish podcast. We are so excited to be with you today. And today we have Justin Thomas with us. He's a psychologist, and he's going to be chatting to us today about how to break patterns of toxic relationships. And that is something that affects so many people, and we are going to tackle it today. So, Justin, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So, let's jump straight into it.
Yes.
So, how do we start breaking those patterns?
Of toxic relationships. I think the first key is to identify that there is a pattern. You can't break something you don't know that exists or that you're unaware of. So you first need to identify why or what the pattern is. For example, it's a very big trend now, calling your ex a narcissist or a toxic ex.
I've heard that, yeah.
Yeah, and it's very much a trend. We call people we disagree with narcissists or someone we just don't like narcissists. Sometimes we have different opinions. So it's become a fad more than an actual thing, but
if you disagree with somebody, naturally they're a narcissist,
they're
or
narcissists
naturally
because
they're
they don't
toxic.
agree. Yes,
And I feel like so many
100%.
people don't even know what that definition is
Yeah.
of a narcissist.
You won't know, especially if you don't learn about it, you won't know. You kind of just pick up what you hear on media and what you hear your friends say, and you just go with it. Um, so yes, that is our fad now. But sticking with that fad, we're going to use as an example. For example, a narcissist. The problem is we think we're attracted to the narcissistic trait. So when we look at our past relationships, we've dated a bunch of narcissists, and in our mind we conceptualize that I've been dating a bunch of narcissists, so I must be attracted to narcissists. And that's not necessarily always the case. The problem is the representation of narcissism is competence. So narcissism feigns competence. For example, when you see someone narcissistic, you think that they have their stuff together. You think that they have direction, they know what they want, they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's not always the case. So how that ties into our pattern identification is we sometimes mistake that we're looking for a narcissist and that's my type.
Yes.
And we fall into the trap of now we're going for a narcissist because we're telling ourselves that's our type, and we're kind of perpetuating our own story there. When in actual fact, what's actually happening is generally, and this isn't true all the time, but generally people who find narcissistic or narcissist attractive, they're actually not attracted to the narcissistic trait. What they're attracted to is the competence trait, which means they want someone who's competent, who knows where they're going in life, what they want to do, who has a vision. But one of the expressions of narcissism is confidence. It's like, imagine narcissism is a mask, and a narcissism is your face, and this mask is competence.
Oh, I see.
And once you reveal that, once you take off that competence mask, you actually see there's narcissism underneath. It doesn't mean someone who's competent is narcissistic, but one of the expressions of narcissism is competence. And one thing we have to identify or we have to learn is how do you identify between someone who's actually competent and who's actually narcissistic.
Yeah. Okay. And I feel like that could be a tricky thing.
That is very tricky, especially when we're younger. It is a very tricky thing because we haven't found ourselves and we haven't experienced enough of the world to separate. We don't have enough experience to separate competence from narcissism. Even once we're older, if we haven't taken the time and effort to learn the difference between competency and narcissism, we won't identify it, and like I said earlier, we'll perpetuate that our type is narcissistic people. One of the key indicators between narcissism and competence, and this is just a tip for everyone out there, is does the evidence back up the competence? So we see with narcissistic people, they will believe very much in themselves, and they'll make you believe in them. But is it true? Are there other people who
can back it up?
Yeah, can validate the information? I can say, yeah, I'm the greatest person at, I don't know, pole dancing or skiing or bricklaying.
Yeah.
And I can convince you, yeah, especially if you don't know the fields that they're in. I can say, I laid this brick with whatever cement, and if you don't know, you're going to believe that.
Yes.
But does the evidence back that up?
And I feel like that's really a good thing to know, so that we're not going to be painting everybody with the same narcissistic brush.
Yeah.
And the same, which is like using that fad word like Justin said.
Narcissist.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I also feel like we need to do some self introspection.
Yeah.
Because it's not all the time the other person.
Sometimes you're the problem.
Sometimes, like when we look at things and we say to ourselves, you know what, who's the common denominator here? Sometimes we need to be like, okay, am I exhibiting some toxic behavior, or am I just playing the victim here?
Yeah.
Everybody who comes into my life is a narcissist, is toxic, you know? But am I like portraying some toxic behavior? What do you think about that? And how can we identify that in ourselves?
Well, there's a couple of things there. The first thing being, sometimes you are the problem. As what it is, and you need to work on yourself, because not everyone, we're not all, or none of us are perfect, you know, and we do have flaws. Another problem is not necessarily that we are the problem, that we are toxic and we're playing the victim, but we don't know, we haven't established boundaries enough yet in order for us to identify problems. So we're perpetuating problems. For example, if someone comes to us and they overstep our boundaries and things like that, instead of stopping it, because we don't have boundaries, we allow it to happen, and we're allowing this energy and this behavior into our lives. So it's not always necessary that you're the toxic person. It's also what you allow into your life.
What you allow. Yes, because I was very much a person who didn't have any boundaries. I didn't even know that there was something that you could do to set boundaries for yourself. Like, I'm not allowing this in my life. I'm not going to, if you portray certain things, or if you do this, everybody makes a mistake. But if you cross these boundaries constantly, look, we can't, and you're not respecting it, I'm not having you in my life. But I didn't even know about that. And I feel like so many people out there, just comment below if you have boundaries, if you enforce them, or if you've actually never heard or know that you could set boundaries for yourself and for your life. So I think that's something that's really important for everybody to know.
It's a lot of people. It's a lot of people that don't know, not only not how to set boundaries, that they're allowed to set boundaries. Sometimes we feel like we need permission to set our own boundaries.
Yeah.
And that's not true. I mean, you're your own individual, you're allowed to set your boundaries. And your boundaries will regulate over time, but you're allowed to have your core boundaries. You don't need someone's permission to set boundaries.
And I feel like you will lose a lot of people in your life once you start setting boundaries.
Yes, but it's which people you lose. So if you don't mind losing some people, especially the people who aren't right for you, set boundaries for yourself. Otherwise, you just have any Tom, Dick, and Harry in your life, and they can walk over you and essentially act how they wish.
Yes.
And remember, not everyone's for you. You don't need to make everyone happy. Right? You're not an ice cream salesman, you know, giving everyone out an ice cream. You're not there to make everyone happy. You have people that are for you, and you have people that are not for you. And that's not to say that the people are not for you, you can't hear the critique or see their point of view and not agree with it. That's fine. But you don't have to be for everyone. You can be for the type of people you want to be with. And that's part of setting boundaries, is establishing what type of people you want to around you. Yes. And also what type of person you want to be. And that's an important part, especially people don't know how to set boundaries, but I think once you start getting more mature, you'll start figuring out what you like and what you don't like, and it's about what you want in your life, what you're hoping, because obviously you have your own goals and your own aspirations, right? You don't just sit there and go, well, today is Thursday, I guess we're just gonna Thursday. You have your vision that you want, and that might mold over time, but that's fine. But you work your boundaries on what you want that vision to be and how that life looks for you.
Yes, and I feel that with tying into boundaries, it's just taking some time for self-improvement. We don't have to jump into relationship after relationship to feel whole or to feel. I feel like some time to ourselves is also necessary in this. As I said, do some self-introspection. What is it that I like? So, and learning to spend. I used to hate being alone. Learning to spend some time by yourself. Knowing what you like.
This is important as well. The self-reflection and holding yourself accountable as well. That's very important, to learn to stand on your own 2 feet and not rely on someone for things. For example, for happiness. I mean, not only is it the reason why it's bad to rely on someone, for example, happiness, is bad, is not great, because if anything happens, and it doesn't have to be this person betrayed you or something. I mean, life also happens. People face different challenges where they can't help you anymore, or maybe someone moves to a new country and they can't be there for you anymore. or maybe they pass away. If you've relied on this person for so long for your happiness and they leave for whatever reason, whether it's malicious or not malicious, that happiness that you've relied on them with has left as well.
Yes. And that's
And
scary.
you're all alone and you feel lost. You'll feel lost. You don't know where, you feel unhappy. You'll get into depression because you took this responsibility. Ideally, it's your responsibility.
It's your responsibility to make yourself
Yeah,
happy.
it's your responsibility to make yourself happy. Now, you've taken this responsibility. Not only have you passed it on to someone else, which puts them under pressure, now they're responsible for their happiness and your happiness. And now, if they do leave, you've lost your source of happiness. So, I'm very much a proponent of if you want to be happy, make yourself happy first, and whatever other joy or let's say happiness you have left, you can give out to the world. But I can't give to the world if I don't have within myself. And I can't rely on other people to make me happy. I can rely on other people to add to my happiness, but I need to be secure enough in myself to know that if this person leaves for whatever reason, or if life happens for whatever reason, that I'm not going to break down. I can still stand on my own 2 feet. Obviously, happiness is just an example, but I can still stand on my own 2 feet. I can look after myself, especially emotionally.
Sorry guys, there was a little bit of a disruption outside, so we moved inside, but let's pick up where we left off. So let's chat a little bit about therapy. What do you think? Sometimes you've got so many ideas or so many thoughts in your brain and you can't make sense of it all.
Yeah.
And you just feel lost. You feel like I'm so stuck in this toxic pattern over and over again. How do I identify this? With other people, how do I identify the toxic traits within myself? Because you're in it. So I feel like sometimes if we have somebody from outside, a different perspective, do you think that will help?
Yeah, that's what therapy ideally is for. It's not just for if you have a bad mental problem or if you have some difficult problem or some difficulty mentally. It's not just if you like what we would say like broken mentally. It's for things like this as well. So it's one thing about therapy that people mistaken for is they think there's a bit of a stigma. If I go to therapy, it means I'm broken. Well, welcome to the real world. We all need a little bit of therapy. So I think therapy ideally it would help. What I would do is before going to therapy, I'll do some self-reflection just so when I'm walking in there, I know what I want to speak about and I'm not just winging it and hoping this guy or lady fixes me. So I'll do some self-reflection and what it is that what goal I'm trying to achieve essentially. The caveat with that is obviously when you're doing therapy for yourself or self-reflection is you're not a professional. As much as you read psychology books and mystery, it was like reading a mystery book and thinking you're a detective, it's not the case. You're not a professional, you're obviously going to miss some stuff and you might be biased in some stuff because we're people, it's going to happen. So I'd say definitely go to therapy. You're going to try a couple of therapists. Don't just try one therapist and it doesn't work and you think, oh, I've tried my therapist. It's like going to a one shoe store and buying one pair of shoes and then never buying shoes again because the shoes didn't fit. You're going to try a couple of stores, you're going to try a couple of shoes, and it's the same with therapists. Remember, therapists are also people. They have their own personalities, their own styles. You guys might not gel, you might gel, they might have their own beliefs. So try a couple of therapists, especially people you think that will align with your values and what you're trying to achieve. And if the first one doesn't work, it's not the end of the world. He's a professional, he knows as well. His whole job is there to help you, not to, score a quick buck off of you. If you feel like he is there trying to score a quick buck off you, it's most probably not the therapist for you. So try a couple of therapists. If you do try a therapist, don't feel like you're betraying the therapist by trying a new therapist. Ultimately, like I said, their job is to help you. It's to make you feel better or to help you clarify on whatever your objective is. It's not there to just keep you hooked in.
Yeah. And I feel like that's so important to seek help, to have that courage also to seek help. Like you say, do some self-reflection, seek help, and it will just give you a different perspective because sometimes we just have this tunnel vision.
We have our goggles on.
Yes, we've got our goggles on how things are, but we can't see the bigger picture. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, and they can help us see the bigger picture. And there's nothing wrong with going to therapy. Like I said, you're not broken if you go into therapy. Sometimes you just need assistance. And also, you need to learn. I mean, if your car's fixed, you're not going to be like, I don't need a mechanic, I'm going to fix my own car. sometimes you take it to a mechanic. If you need health related problems, you go to a doctor. And same mentally. All a therapist is or psychologist is as a doctor for the brain.
And I was doing a podcast with a coach. I was doing a podcast with a coach yesterday, actually, and he told me through every phase of our life, we need some guidance. So when we're born, we need our mom and dad. When we are going through, when we are going through school, we need our teachers. We need a sports coach. We need our university lecturers. We need managers. We need mentors. So we need to break the stigma when it comes to seeking help for mental health issues and life issues in general. And going on to that, how important do you think communication is, healthy communication is in a relationship?
I think communication in general is a very important aspect of life. When I'm communicating and I don't communicate effectively, anything that's not said during that communication period is assumed by whoever I'm communicating to. So if we speak and I'm trying to say something and I don't communicate properly, whatever's not said, you're going to assume, obviously, you have your own mind, so you're going to think about it the way you think about it, and you're not actually hearing what I'm trying to say. So learning to communicate is a big part of dealing with the world, because we communicate with people all the time. Whether it's your boss, whether it's your children, whether it's your family, whether it's love interest, you're going to communicate with people. So ideally, to learn to communicate effectively and to be understood effectively is a big part of communication, a big part of life. And there's two parts of communication. It's communicating, how do I communicate, and how to receive communication. That's also part we overlook sometimes, is you just think, I'm going to communicate how I feel, but you're not willing to listen. But there's a couple of things we can do to help with communication, and one of those things is going on the self-help journey is journaling. This is a big part of setting the foundation for communication. So like earlier, we were speaking about therapists and self-help. Self-help isn't just to make you feel better, it's also to prepare you for other parts of your life. So for example, like I was speaking about journalism, when I journal, it's not just to write down how I feel. Journalism clarifies your thoughts, and this is one thing people who journal know and people who don't journal don't know. So if you don't do it, you don't know. But what you'll notice is once you start journaling is I'm starting to write down my thoughts, and I'm starting to clarify what it is that I'm busy thinking, so that when I communicate, I'm not just coming out with a bunch of jumble that's still processing in my head, and as I'm busy processing, the words are flowing out, and then halfway through I'm like, actually I didn't mean that. When you journal, there's a great example. It's like sifting. If you ever bake, if you know how to bake, and you've ever sifted, you'll know that flour sits in lumps, and when I sift, what happens to that flour? It starts to turn out into the baking tray, right? So journaling is the same. I have all my thoughts are lumps, and when I write, I'm basically sifting those thoughts into coherent point of view or ideologies.
Yeah. And that's such a great example or analogy, because once we sift our thoughts, we can go to our partner with a clear message on, this is what I've been thinking. And because we've sorted it out in our brain already, we don't just go there with shouting and screaming, and that's my pet peeve when it comes to
tripping
relationships.
up over our own words.
Yes. And then also fighting to win and not fighting to resolve the issue. And not necessarily fighting, we need to now learn to communicate and resolve the issue.
Yeah. One thing on communication that I do want to stress is, when we look at communication, we always go, how do I communicate with my partner? And we to look at it very like partner-centric idea. Communication is an essential human activity. It's like cooking and drinking water. Because we're social beings, we need to connect with other people. That's how we get endorphins, by connecting with other people. It's how we fulfill our life. Like, no one really fulfills their lives. Obviously, there's extreme exceptions, but that's really extreme exceptions. But for most people, we surround ourselves with people. And if I don't know how to communicate, it's not just that I'm ruining relationships or damaging relationships with my partner. I could be damaging relationships at work. I could be damaging relationships with friends, with my children, because I'm also passing on that lack of skill to my children.
Yes.
And they're also going to go out in the world. Yeah, they're going to go out into the world one day, and they're not going to know how to communicate effectively. So learning to communicate, in my opinion, is the same as learning to cook. drinking water, learning to do your laundry. It's essential to human existence.
Wow. And that is, yeah, that's up there. Hey?
Yeah.
That's up there with learning basics.
Basic skills.
I think that communication is a basic skill that everybody needs to, and active communication, like active listening, really knowing what the other person is saying, not listening to respond, but listening to comprehend and understand where they're coming from. And then going now, just to wrap things up. Now we've been through all of our stages. We have been in toxic relationships. We have gotten out of them. We're trying to, self-reflect and become more self-aware, do self-improvement, seeking therapy and all of that. We've spent some time on our own. Now we're ready to get back into the dating scene.
Yes.
How important is it to listen to your gut or your instincts when it comes to this?
Let's see. I think it's important to at least take your gut into consideration.
Okay.
I'm reading the book right now. It's called Thinking Fast and Slow. And it shows us essentially how sometimes our gut can lead us astray. And there's a couple of reasons for this. I'm not going to go too in depth into it, but one of the reasons is we obviously have our own beliefs and opinions. And sometimes that influences how our gut feels. And sometimes our beliefs and opinions are unjustified. So I don't think we should ignore our gut because of this. It's important that obviously our gut gives us an indication of how we feel in the situation, but we shouldn't trump gut over facts and vice versa. Like if the facts of the situation are telling us something different to our gut, then we can't ignore the facts. It's just how it is. But we're going to have a gut feeling, and we have to go with that gut feeling. And then obviously when facts present themselves, you adjust them as they go along. So I think it's important to listen to your gut, but you can't let it take over your decision making, especially in the face of facts that are countering your gut feeling.
Yeah, that is so important. Thank you for that. We really appreciate you being with us on our podcast today, and we really appreciate you watching. And if you enjoy that, please do give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, comment down below. We read all of our comments and we reply to all of our comments. And we will see you again soon with an amazing topic. It is going to be about intimacy, and I hope that you will enjoy that one as well. Have an amazing day. We will see you again soon.